welcome back to the podcast. This podcast, we explore inner work, self-love, and everything it means to be a woman in today's world. I'm Jade, if you don't know me already, and I just want to say a big thank you for joining me today. In this episode, I wanted to deep dive a topic that is close to my heart, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this as well. And we're going to talk about embracing imperfection. Now, I spoke in my last podcast episode about, accepting yourself and self-love and self-worth for, the different journeys and stories and chapters of your life, and how we can look back and see the beauty in it, but it takes us having to accept those imperfect parts of ourselves in order to fully embody who we are. And so I wanted to talk about that today, on how we can embrace imperfection and the art of being a perfectly imperfect woman, because as women we are often taught that we need to be perfect, or there is this pressure that we feel that we have to look a certain way or achieve certain things or meet certain standards. But perfection is actually, I believe, an illusion. And the key to living like a really happy and, joyful life is to embrace our imperfections instead of trying to hide them. Like, I feel the more we can befriend those parts of us, the happier we become. And I shared this a bit in my last episode on how me accepting different parts of myself has helped me free myself from certain shame or ideologies or a certain narrative. And I want to talk about how to let go of the pressure to be perfect and embrace that beauty, because this is truly one of the most empowering things you can do as a woman. And it for sure has not been easy for me. If you don't know, I've competed in, I think, almost 18 bodybuilding competitions. I've seen my body change so much. I also had a big online social media presence at one point where I was consistently putting myself out there and subjected to people's, opinions. And also when I competed, and I've done beauty pageants, and I've really gone on a big journey of, putting myself out there to be judged, to be criticized from, the external. And I've also gone on the journey of deeply criticizing myself and being so hard on myself and hating parts of myself internally. And so there was a big inner journey of self-love that I had to go on and really get rid of any need for external validation. And that in itself just helped me love me so much more. So yeah, what does imperfection even mean? So imperfection doesn't mean being flawed or broken. It simply means that we are human, right? Imperfection is a part of the human experience, and this is what makes us so real and unique and relatable. Like, I found that whenever I shared quite vulnerably online, or when I'm vulnerable with my friends on what I'm truly going through, they can relate to me a lot more, or people could relate to me a lot more. And it shows that we are not trying to be this perfect version of ourselves that has everything together. Because, the truth is, perfection doesn't allow for growth. When you strive for perfection, you're afraid to make mistakes, and you're usually stuck in a place of fear. And seeing that, being imperfect, like truly imperfect, it allows you to be okay with making mistakes. It gives you the freedom to learn and stumble and to evolve. And if you think about how much you've learned from your mistakes or challenges, it's in these moments of quote unquote imperfection that we discover our true strength and resilience and our capacity for growth. And I shared that I'd done some things in my life and made some decisions that I necessarily wasn't proud of, but then I know that without them, I wouldn't be this version of me today, and I wouldn't have all the knowledge that I have and the wisdom, and I wouldn't have the level of self-love that I have for myself, without having gone through those things. So the first thing I do want to encourage you to do is release the idea that you need to be perfect, because it is a myth, and it's keeping you from fully embracing like the beautiful, authentic woman that you already are, which is messy and whole and imperfect in all the most beautiful, beautiful ways. And I believe that imperfection is where the magic happens. It's these imperfections that we find our unique selves. And it's, if you think about the quirky things that you love about other people, they're often the things that they love about you too. And I always use the sunset as like kind of analogy. Like, you'd never look at the sunset and be like, oh, it just needs a little bit more of this or a little less of that. You just look at it in awe, like in just how magic it is just being the way it is. And that's how we should really start to view ourselves, in my opinion. It's our imperfections that make us unique and interesting and authentic, and are what allow us to connect with others on a much deeper level. Because when we embrace our imperfections, we're telling that other person that it's okay for them to do the same. We are all mirrors. I say this so frequently, but it is so true. If I'm trying to come across as this perfect person that has all my life together, and I haven't dealt with heartbreak, and I don't have financial scarcity and all of these things, like, if someone's around me, they're never going to feel truly safe to open up, because they're not going to think I can relate to them in ways. And if you think about a time where you've shared something vulnerable with a friend or a loved one, like maybe a fear or a mistake or a challenge you were facing, like when you shared that, you didn't lose value or worth. In fact, it probably deepened your connection with that person, if that person has that capacity within themselves. And I shared this in my last episode, that I felt a lot of shame come up recently when I shared something with someone about my past. And this is because I need to fully integrate that within myself, and had to do the work to fully accept that about myself in order, for me to feel free from it, right? But I also had a wonderful conversation with one of my best girlfriends today, and we were kind of telling each other our biggest secrets, which is really fun, or just like things that we're going through. And it came from like such a place of like no judgment, just loving the person for where they were at. And there was just so much love for the fact that she felt that she could share the truth with me, and nothing about necessarily what she was sharing. Like, of course, that's a wonderful thing to be able to get something off your chest, but just the feeling of just being able to share and be like, I'm not perfect. This is the thing that I said that creates like more real relationships, which I believe we are all truly craving. But we can't have a real relationship with someone else if we don't have a real relationship with ourselves. And so the more we embrace our imperfections, the more we allow others to embrace theirs. And then we start to create this world where authenticity is valued over perfection, and where realness becomes the most beautiful thing we can offer. It's definitely easier said than done, and I'm not perfect. Surprise, surprise. I've been doing, a lot of inner work for the past 5 years on myself, like many plant medicine ceremonies, many energy healings, therapy sessions, and it's a never-ending journey. It's kind of like the spiral and the journey of life. So it's definitely not easy, but we can definitely start and do things to embrace our imperfections. But how is we need to let go first of the need to be perfect, and actually first ask ourselves where that need comes from. And I do have like a few practical tips, because tips definitely help me. But yeah, we need to let go of that and first understand why we're holding on so tightly to it. And once we can kind of get to the root of that, everything else becomes a little bit easier, because when you can first identify with why you feel the need to be perfect, you can almost work backwards. So I would say that would be the first step. The next step I would say would be practicing self-compassion. Like when you've made a mistake, or, if you've made a mistake in the past, or if something's not gone as planned, you treat yourself with the same kind of kindness and understanding that you would to someone you loved. Instead of like that negative self-talk on how you kind of view yourself or view past situations, or a mistake you make in the present moment, for example, you can let yourself know that you're doing the best you can, and it's okay not to be perfect. The more you start to believe this from a mental level, the more your body's going to start to feel it, right? The more compassion you have with yourself, it starts to get a little bit easier, because if you can radically and wholeheartedly say like, it's okay not to be perfect, it allows you to just like drop that weight a little bit of like we don't even realize we're holding on sometimes. Like, I know when I lost my job, I was beating myself up over it, not even consciously, right? It was like this background tape that was playing in the background of me not even realizing I was being so harsh to myself, because it was almost like not in my conscious. And then as soon as I brought it into my conscious and I became aware of it, I was able to be like, Jade, this happens. Like, it's normal. Like, this happens to people. It's okay. And then I also had people reflect that to me. Like, they would laugh and be like, Jade, why are you so upset or down at yourself? Like, this is a part of life. Like, how many people have lost their jobs in their life? Like, why are you taking it so seriously? And it is true. We need to not be so serious and bring more joy into our lives. The next thing I would say is we got to shift our focus to growth, not perfection. So instead of trying to be perfect, you aim for growth. So I could look at that job situation, and rather than feeling like I was imperfect and I failed, I could be like, wow, I grew as a person, and now this is a beautiful opportunity for me to step into a new version of myself. And that is completely rewriting the story, shifting the narrative. And you can ask yourself, yeah, what did I learn? How can I grow? Because when we focus on that growth, it becomes much easier to see those quote unquote mistakes or failures, whatever it is, as valuable lessons instead. And so, yeah, from losing my job, I could take lots of positive things, negative things away from that. But I just choose to look at it as an opportunity to do better next time, and or make a different decision, or go in a different direction with my life, and let go of the idea that I need to be perfect and not be embarrassed by it. Because if I'm hard to myself and hold that shame, I'm going to project that outwards. Imperfection also doesn't mean that you don't deserve to celebrate, certain accomplishments. It just means that you acknowledge and appreciate, the progress without needing it for it to be flawless. Like, I know from bodybuilding competitions, like if I had like a small win of, getting through the day, or making the effort to go to a competition, even if the results weren't necessarily the things that I want, like I can still celebrate the journey and not just the perfect ideal outcome that I would have wanted. Same with relationships. So you can look at a relationship that maybe ended and find the beauty in what was and all the things that you learned because of it, and like celebrate those small things of like, well, I got to experience this with them, I learned this about myself, we got to go here. Like, all these little things are so wonderful, even if the outcome wasn't necessarily perfect, because maybe the relationship ended, but maybe it was like perfectly imperfect, right? It was exactly what it needed to be, just as you are exactly who you need to be. And one of the biggest thieves, I believe, of embracing your own imperfections is comparison. Because say you're in relationships and you're comparing your relationship failing to someone else's succeeding, or in fitness, you're comparing your body to someone else's. It's like when you're constantly comparing yourself to others, you're always going to feel like you're falling short. But the truth is, every single one of us, like you, me, your best friend, your mom, everyone, we all have our own journey. We all have our own strengths. We all have our own imperfections. And instead of comparing yourself to someone else's highlight reel, especially on social media, focus on your own growth and journey, because like I said, you are exactly where you need to be. And if someone looks at someone's life on social media and thinks that's the full picture, like I feel like we're getting a lot more aware of it. But from someone who's been in the industry for so long, I can tell you there were so many people that I knew on a personal level, their lives felt very different, either internally or looked very different externally than what they portrayed on social media. And this isn't a bad thing, because ultimately social media is what we choose to make it. So if someone wants to make it this picture perfect life, that's their choice, and they have that right to do so, just as we have the right to follow. And is it necessarily authentic? No, of course. I do believe we should be our most authentic selves. However, what I'm trying to get at here is that it's not always what you see. And I know you could have looked at my social media the last year and thought I was having the best year of my life, living in Bali, like so happy, like joyful, and all of those things are so true. But there is, kind of like duality to everything. And just because I was happy and I have this beautiful life in Bali doesn't mean there were moments where I was heartbroken and my world had shattered and I didn't know how I was going to make it through the next day, and I lost my job, and there was days I just didn't know what I was living for. And that is also real, but you would never know that if you look at someone's social media. So this is why we should never compare ourselves to anyone else, and we should just see how we've grown in ways from old versions of ourselves, and even not to compare ourselves to our old version of ourselves either, because I get stuck in this sometimes. I compare myself now to my previous self, where I was a full-time YouTuber and I had a beautiful flat in London. I was going to red carpet events and I was making loads of money and living my dream, and now I question myself at times and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And that's the real truth. So try not compare yourself too much to the past version of yourself, and focus on, like I said, those small wins, on all the growth that you have had and all the things that you've learned and the journey that you've been on, and be grateful for it all. And finally, it's often, I believe, our most imperfect moments that show our true strength and selves. So embrace your vulnerability, whether that's sharing your struggles with others, asking for help when you need it, or being honest about where you're at. I had to be really vulnerable the last couple of months and ask for help from people and support and love, because I really just needed that. I was at a really low point in my life, and I'm still kind of in it, I won't lie. Like, I'm not fully out. Everything hasn't manifested yet, and I'm still finding some days hard. But when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you show others that it's okay. And vulnerability is like such a powerful tool for connection and healing. And yeah, if I hadn't been vulnerable, I would have been a lot worse off, and I truly, truly mean it. So take a moment to reflect on what embracing imperfection really means to you, because I believe it means giving yourself the freedom to be real, to make mistakes. And that's why I love this podcast, because I feel like it's a space and place where I can share without judgment. And that's what embracing imperfection is. It's for you to grow without judgment from others, judgment from yourself. And it's releasing that need to be perfect and to have done life a certain kind of way, or to have not made mistakes, and just embracing who you are as a human. And yeah, your uniqueness, because when you embrace your imperfections, you're no longer chasing this version of yourself that truly does not exist, and you're able to show up as who you are, right? And I always say you are worthy of a love and a life that you desire in this exact moment. So I want to leave you with today's episode knowing that your imperfections are not something to hide or be ashamed of. They're truly your superpower, because I am the version of me, and I think I'm a super person because of all the mistakes and, weird little quirks of my life that make me me. Because that's what makes you human, even though I say like we're a soul having a human experience. But yeah, it's what makes you beautifully you. And I think that's something to remember, because when I look at my journey, although there are things that I'm not proud of and, I've held shame around, like I spoke about in my last episode, I also know they're the things that are so special to me, and they're the things that make me me. And when I can let go of the need to having to be some kind of perfect version of myself, I can see them as just something that makes me a little bit more special. So your imperfections do the exact same. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this episode in some ways helped you to begin embracing your own imperfections and see how they make you who you are. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You are worthy. You are enough exactly who you are, mistakes, failures and all. So yeah, if you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love if you gave it a review, or you shared it with a friend who might need to hear this message. And yeah, I'd love if you gave the podcast a follow or subscribe on Spotify or Apple. It really shows me that you're enjoying these episodes and encourages me to keep making more. So yes, keep embracing your imperfections, and I love you lots.